Spiritual Christianity, collected from the theological works of Emanuel Swedenborg. Chapter 8. Paragraph 128. So much has already been said about the correspondency which exists in heaven between the states of the mind and the objects of the senses, and upon the distinctness of their appearance to all the sentient faculties, that he who has advanced thus far in the path of spiritual truth will scarcely require anything further to be said, that his perception into the real constitution of the spiritual world may be made complete. It may be sufficient to recall to his mind a few of the truths that bear more directly upon this part of the subject, relating to the distinctness of the objects in the spiritual world, and then to lay before him some of the passages from which the following proposition has been drawn. Paragraph 129. The law of correspondency is the universal law of creation. It embraces, without any exception, every degree and quality of the mind, whether good or evil, and every property which is exactant to the senses, whether called by the name of matter or of spirit. It comprehends, therefore, all the excellences of perception, of affection, and of sensation. In heaven, all things are beautiful and attractive in proportion to their use, and their use is in proportion to the excellence of their interior causes. Of those causes, they are the reflected images. The very delights which are the representative world of heaven yields in such profusion to the mind are the outpourings of the happiness communicated to the wills by the presence of the divine love, and of the satisfaction imparted to their intellects by the presence of divine wisdom. That divine presence, inflowing by the receptivity of the mind into the representative plane, gives fullness of correspondency to every property which comes within the circle of sensation. There is no selfish nor worldly love among them to disturb the course of the divine influx, or to weaken its power, and the consequent is that not only are the objects which are presented to their senses beautiful and attractive in exact agreement with truth and goodness of their minds, but they are presented in the most distinct manner by all these properties which in this world are called the properties of matter. This distinctness or vividness of sensation is as much a part of the law of correspondency as the sensuous properties themselves. It represents, because it is an effect of, the condition of the mind. It follows, therefore, that in heaven, where their minds are open to admit freely the Lord's love and wisdom for their guidance and instruction, the clearness of their interior perceptions is imaged in the distinctness of their external sensations, and in the superior powers of discrimination which their sentient faculties possess. This is especially marked in the faculties of sight, hearing, smell, and touch. In these they have a greater plenitude of sensation and a more accurate and nicer discrimination. That is, the properties of sensuous objects come more vividly and distinctly before angels than similar properties can be presented to the sentient faculties of men. Thus, to take an example from the mineral kingdom, in the properties of metals, as they are exhibited in the two worlds or the two classes of minds. Metals are as much an object of the senses in the one state of life as they are in the other. It makes not the slightest difference in their properties that they have a spiritual or mental origin in one world, and that a material origin is assigned to them in the other. The properties by which metals are distinguished one from another are of similar kinds in both. In the spiritual world, as in the natural, metals at ordinary temperatures are, for the most part, solid bodies, for such solidarity belongs to their representative character. They differ from one another in colour, tenacity, and malleability, in hardness and elasticity, and all these properties and many others, such as their different powers of combination with other bodies, are but part of the correspondency which belongs to each metal. Each property, as well as the peculiarity which distinguishes each property, has its signification, because each property, as well as all collectively, has its cause in the minds of those to whom the metal is sensuously exhibited. But in agreement with the universal law of correspondency, the properties of metals must be more clearly exhibited to the different senses of angels, and be more accurately discriminated by them than the properties of matter can be in this world. For the exquisiteness of the sense in heaven, when opposing spheres of evil and of falsehood are removed, is determined wholly by the excellence of their interior life, and the interior life of angels, which is a life of love and of wisdom, is far more excellent than that of man. This is the ground of the superior power which the sentient faculties possess in heaven, or the reason why the objects of the senses, which are in truth nothing more than states of sentient faculties themselves, are most clear and distinct in all those properties by which the various combinations of matter are known and distinguished in the natural world. The sensuous objects of the spiritual world are not only fully and distinctly obvious to the senses of spirits and angels, but are even more completely so than are the objects of his senses to a man in nature, the difference being not in their objective properties, but in the different ways of accounting for them, either by an influx of a spiritual kind or of a natural. Arcana Celestia 10608. It is commonly believed in the world that angels dwell in a region above our atmosphere, and there subsist as aerial beings without a plane to stand upon. This opinion is prevalent in the minds of many men because they do not hold that angels and spirits are in like forms with men on earth. Thus that they have faces, arms, hands and feet, and in a word, bodies. Still less do they believe that angels and spirits have habitations or mansions, and yet the truth is that they dwell together on tracts of country just the same as men do upon earth, celestial angels upon mountains, and the spiritual upon rocks, and those who are not yet angels in the open level country between. From Divine Love and Wisdom 321. It should be known that the spiritual world is in its outward appearance altogether like the natural. Tracts of country appear there, mountains, hills, valleys, plains, fields, lakes, rivers, and fountains, as in the natural world, and all the objects, in short, of the mineral kingdom. Paradises, gardens, groves, and woods appear adorned with trees and shrubs of every kind with their fruit and seeds, and also plants, flowers, herbs, and grasses. Thus all the objects which belong to the vegetable kingdom. In that world, land animals, birds, and fish of every kind appear. In other words, all the objects of the animal kingdom, and in that world an angel and a spirit is a man. These observations are premised for the purpose of showing that the whole spiritual world is, with one only exception, entirely like the natural. The sole difference between them is that in the former world objects are not fixed and stated as they are in the latter, because in that world the whole is spiritual and nothing natural. From the Doctrine of Faith, number 63. All such objects as are in the natural world appear in the spiritual world also. Houses and palaces appear there, paradises and gardens, with trees in them of every kind, meadows and arable land, plains and shrubberies, herds and flocks also, all of them resembling the objects which are beheld upon this earth. Nor is there any other difference to be discovered between them but this, that the latter have a natural origin and the former a spiritual. Angels, therefore, being themselves spiritual, see those objects which have a spiritual origin just as man sees those which have a natural origin. From Arcana Celestia 1881. Certain spirits, on being told that men do not believe that spirits are able to see and hear and have the sense of touch, were very indignant, even angry at it. For men ought to be aware, they said, that there can be no life without sensation, And the more exquisite the sense, so much more the excellent is the life. The objects which are sensuously presented to them, they added, are adequate to the excellence of their sense. The representative forms in the spiritual world, which are from the Lord, are real, for they are the sources of all objects in nature and in the world. Their senses are also much better and more excellent than those of men. In terms such as these did they express their indignation. And from Heaven and Hell 175. As all the objects which correspond to their interior faculties represent them also, they are therefore called representatives. And as they vary according to the state of their interior faculties, they are therefore called appearances. And yet the objects which appear before the eyes of the angels in heavens and are perceived by the other senses appear and are perceived not only as really and as much to the life as the objects of this world are perceived by men, but even much more clearly, distinctly, and perceptively. And from Arcana Celestia 3387. If it should be said that in heaven they have no idea of place, nor consequently of distance, but instead of them ideas of a state of mind, such an assertion could not be comprehended by man, for he would believe that if it were to be the case, there would be nothing distinct, and all would be confused and mingled together in one. The truth, however, is that all the objects in heaven are so distinct that it is quite impossible for them to be more so. And from Arcana Celestia 1628. Angels all dwell in houses of a magnificent description. I have frequently seen them and been in them, and have been astonished at their magnificence. When on these occasions I have conversed with them, their habitations appeared so clearly, and were so obvious to the senses, that nothing could be more so. The habitations upon earth would scarcely admit of a comparison with them. They also call the houses upon earth dead, and not real, but their own living and true, because they are from the Lord. And from Arcana Celestia 1626. Numberless objects such as these are seen by angels and angelic spirits in clear day, and what is astonishing, they are perceived by every sense.